Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we have an all-together service, which means that we are carrying on with our Heroes of the Bible theme. Can you remember who we looked at last month? That's right, it was Josiah. And we learnt about how he was chosen to be a king where he was only 8 because he was a man after God's own heart. And he did his best to turn the whole kingdom of Judah back towards God. What an amazing man. This week, the hero we're going to be looking at is a woman called Naomi. Do you know her story? Okay, well, sit comfortably and listen because we will be reading it together. The story begins in the land of Bethlehem with Naomi and her husband Elimelech. Bethlehem was in the middle of a famine. Does anyone know what a famine is? A famine is when the land is so dry that it is unable to grow any food. So Naomi and her husband didn't know what to do. So they left the land of Bethlehem and moved to the land of Moab. Naomi had 2 sons, and they both met their wives in the land of Moab. This was unusual because they married women who were not from their area, and back then you would normally marry people who were from the same tribe as you. But then something horrible happened. Naomi's husband and 2 sons died, and Naomi felt very sad and very alone and very unimportant. Have you ever felt unimportant? Okay, well, Naomi decided that she would go back to the land of Bethlehem. Naomi said to her daughter-in-laws,
"My daughters, return to your own mother's homes.
Wherever you go, I go. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God."
Can you guess the name of her daughter-in-law? Exactly, her name was Ruth. Naomi and Ruth set out for the land of Bethlehem, and although they didn't know it, God was taking care of them. God knew that their hearts were sad because of the death of their husbands, and God knew that life was going to be hard for them, so he prepared a way for them. And Naomi knew that Ruth would feel like she didn't belong, but she took Ruth with her and treated her as her own daughter. In Bethlehem, Ruth needed to collect food for her and Naomi. So Naomi sent her to a field where she could collect the grain that had fallen to the ground. The owner of the field asked his workers,
"Who is this woman?"
The workers explained that she was with Naomi from the land of Moab. What Ruth didn't realise was that the owner of the field was a relative of, wait for it, Naomi! The owner's name was Boaz, and Boaz saw that Ruth was a good worker who cared for Naomi, and who Naomi really cared for herself, even though she was from a completely different place. Boaz was kind to Ruth and invited her to join him and his workers for a meal. Then he sent Ruth home with grain for Naomi. When Naomi saw the grain, she was amazed.
May he be blessed by the Lord."
Naomi really wanted Ruth to be taken care of. And so she sent Ruth to where Boaz was sleeping.
Who are you?
It is Ruth.
Boaz was honoured that Ruth would be willing to marry him, but knew that there was a closer relative to her than him. The next day, Boaz went to the town to meet this relative. If the relative would not take care of her like Naomi did, then he would. God knew that Boaz would show kindness to Ruth and Naomi. The next day, Boaz and the relative met, and the relative gave Boaz permission to marry Ruth. Naomi was very pleased that Boaz was going to look after Ruth. As she really loved and cared for Ruth, and she gave her the opportunity to feel loved and accepted in Naomi's own land. So what an amazing story. Naomi was such a caring and accepting woman that she accepted and looked after Ruth as her own daughter. So let's go and learn a little bit more about how we can be like Naomi together. Bye!